What's up, bitches? We're back, and you know where we're back. Over here at Outlaws, as per usual. Yeah. Time for our weekly Thursday session. Nothing new to really report besides we're gonna totally wreck tonight. We lost last week. We were down for 700. We're coming back with a vengeance. I'm ready. Are you guys ready? I hope you're ready. Let's get it. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we start this session buying in for $300. There was some action on the table, so the stacks changed significantly in that amount of time. A couple people doubled up, so they had around 600. I got down to 200. Nothing really too interesting to go over that brought us to this stack. Just saw a couple of flops and missed, so we ended up adding on for another 200, just so we had some firing power in case we got into a big hand. Speaking of big hands, this next hand got pretty large pretty fast. Shelby to my left opened to $45 pre-flop, the button called, and then the small blind raised to 100. Shelby put in the call for the additional 60, and then the button called as well. So there's already $300 in the middle, and they went to this flop three ways. We're not in the hand, but we've been so card dead that we're just gonna throw this in there for fun. The flop comes out 6-3-4 with two spades. The small blind open shoves for a couple $100 here. Shelby snaps it off. Button Mr. Mike gets out of the way, so they go heads up to this turn and river, which comes a 2 of hearts and a king of diamonds. Shelby shows 5-4 of hearts for the straight, and the small blind begrudgingly flips over pocket aces. Pretty disgusting hand. Don't think either player played it wrong. The small blind raised adequately. Shelby decided to mix it up and get in there with some suited connectors. Flops a pair with an open ender. That's the exact kind of flop that you want with that hand. That is some quality gambling right there, ladies and gentlemen. Nice pot, Mr. Shelby. Moving on to the next one. For this next hand, the $6 straddle is on by yours truly. We look down at Jack 10 suited, and we haven't played very many hands, so if we get raised to anywhere around 15-20 bucks, I'm just gonna say screw it and come along since we are on the button. Even though we are off suit, I think this hand is good enough to go. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Shelby decides to re-raise to 50 after a couple people try to limp along. His nemesis that was in the small blind for the last hand calls him, so he's going heads up out of position for this next hand. 110 in the middle. The board comes out 8-6 king with two spades. Shelby decides to bet 35, and the second that he makes this bet, I put this man on ace king. His opponent open shoves for $200 and some change. Shelby snaps it off, and surprise, surprise, our man had ace king offsuit. Got shoved into by 4-6 off, and ace king held. I think there was a little bit of tilt equated into that one, but we've been over here playing for an hour. Haven't been able to play a single pot over $40, and this a-hole next to us is just scooping pots left and right. I mean, look at this stuff, guys. Look at this. Man bought in for 600, has been here for less than an hour, and he's almost quadrupled up. Okay, it's a bit of an exaggeration. He got a double up, but you know, it feels like a quadruple up when your card dead and somebody next to you is breaking in big old pots left and right. Fortunately, that didn't last very long for us. So as the night continued, the stacks got deeper and deeper. We still haven't really caught any hands to go over, but that's about to change momentarily. But before we caught a hand, we added on for another $400. I'm down about 150 right now, so we're in for a total of 900 with about 750 in front of us to play with. Let's finally catch one of our hands. For this next one, we are on the small blind when we look down at King 7 suited. Button raised to $15 here, and I'm gonna go ahead and call with our suited king. We might run into it. This player seems to be a bit on the tighter side, so if we hit the king, we might be no good, but if we check it to him on a king high board and he does in fact bet, then we can get away from it pretty easily. So I'd much rather hit a 7 or some sort of flush draw here, but luckily we don't have to be too concerned with that because we hit 2 pair on this king 7-9 board with 2 diamonds. So we're out of position. I go ahead and put in a check here. The button decides to continue his story that he has a good hand. I expect this to be ace king a lot of the time, which is very ideal. I guess it's possible for him to have a flush draw here too if he has specifically ace queen of diamonds. I don't really see him doing this with any other hand here into 2 different opponents. I debate between just flatting here or raising. I honestly don't know which play would have been better considering there is a flush draw and a straight draw out there. But in this case, I decided to just flat pot here. The second opponent puts in the call as well, and we go to the turn, which comes a king of spades. I am really praying that our opponent has ace king here now, because we have him absolutely coolered. I go ahead and check one more time. Not sure if this was the right play. I think I like check raising the flop and then leading out on the turn a bit more, but that's not what we did this time. And tragedy occurs when the button actually checks this back on the turn. Going to this river 3 ways, and a red 3 of hearts peels off. Now we can't risk checking a third street in case the villain checks back. Trying to figure out a bet sizing that makes sense. Obviously, I'm hoping that our opponent has ace king, but just in case he has a hand like second pair or a pair above this 9, I'm going to keep the bet on the smaller side. I decide to fire out here for 125. If our opponent does in fact have ace king, I expect him to raise here a lot of the time anyway. I don't know what Mark is doing with the way he laid out these chips here. We won't talk about it though. And when the action gets back over to the button, he goes into the tank for a little bit. At this point, I'm really happy with the size that I picked, because I think he's contemplating calling. But to make matters even better, our opponent does not put in the call. He announces a raise to 300. I instantly say all in, because if he's willing to put in 300, he's probably willing to put in the rest of it. He snap calls us. We flip over our king 7, and our opponent shows pocket 9s for an absolute cooler. I thought I was trapping on the flop, but our opponent outflopped us. We caught up on the turn, and we got into a boat over boat situation that neither of us were getting away from. For this next hand, we looked down at 9-7 offsuit in the small blind. Still haven't played too many hands besides that big one we just had with the king 7. Not really sure why we're limping in for $3. Probably prefer to just throw in an extra $5-7 bucks in there to make this a pot worth playing for. Anyhow, 15 in the middle, and this board run out comes king 8-6 rainbow. So we flop an open-ended straight draw. Not too much in the pot here, so we go for an $8 bet. Would have been fine going all the way up to 15 here. We end up getting 2 callers, so we go 3 ways to this turn with $36 in the middle, which brings us the queen of spades. Changes absolutely nothing for us here, but we want to keep building this pot just in case we hit our straight on the river. Side a bid $18, about half the pot once again. This time we only get 1 caller, so we're going heads up to this river, 72 bucks in the middle, and we completely brick out when the deuce of spades hits the river. We have 9 high here and no hopes of winning this hand unless we steal it. So we need to go for about a pod size bet here. So I line up $70, throw it into the middle. Our opponent very quickly puts in the call. We're obviously no good here with 9 high. He shows ace king, which I was completely shocked by. I figured he had top pair on the flop, but I was hoping he didn't have that great of a kicker and would be able to let it go. Not expecting to see ace king there under the gun for a $3 limp. But it's all right, because it's going over to Mike, who's a great guy and has been consistently showing up to our Thursday game. Moving on to the next one. We got smashed by ace king, so it's only natural that now we smash people with ace king. Am I right? Make it $10 to go in middle position. We get 4 callers, and we go off to this flop, which comes ace 6-3 with 2 spades. This many people involved, I expect somebody to have a piece of this, so I go ahead and check my top pair. Catch a fish on the line. When the cutoff decides to bet $15, the button very quickly puts in the call, and the action gets back over to me. I decide to just call here as well. Could argue for a raise since there is a flush draw out there, but both these villains are on the tighter side. Action gets back to me, and I check once more out of position. The cutoff this time just puts in a check, and then the button fires out here for $25. Now this is a time where I really wish I would have raised, but for some reason I decided to just flat once again. 9 of spades hits river. I check one more time. Button takes the bait a third time, decides to fire here for about $60. Contemplate whether or not he would have played the flush draw like this, and I think it makes sense. He could also just have a smaller ace here, considering his sizing. So I end up getting curious and flicking in the call, and our opponent instantly announces that we're good. We flip over our ace king, and we scoop another small pot. For this next hand, we have a PLO Bomb Pot, capped at $100 as per usual. We look down at Jack 10 and Jack deuce double suited. Flop is an absolute dream. Comes 8-9 queen rainbow. There's $70 in the middle. Flop the absolute nuts. There's no flush draw to be worried about, so I want to go ahead and start building this pot. I decided to bet $30, expecting to be called by any hand that has a pair, 2 pair, or a pair plus straight draw. Obviously sets as well. We end up getting 3 callers, so there's 190 in the middle going to this turn, which comes a 6 of spades. Doesn't change anything. We still have the nuts bets here, so we're going to go ahead and cap it at $60. Shelby does not seem to be pleased with his current predicament, thinks about it for quite some time before saying the following. The other two opponents very quickly put in the call as well, so we go 4 ways to this river.
You have 10 jack already?
Yeah.
430 in the middle, having to sweat one more card and praying that the board doesn't pair. And the river is a 10 of clubs, so we no longer have the nuts. We are double blocking the nuts though, only losing to king jack here. Nobody seems to want to flip over their cards, which is usually a pretty good sign that we're good. Everybody returns their cards to the dealer, and we end up taking this $430 bomb pot. For this next hand, the $6 straddle is on. I look down at pocket 3s in the button. Only the small and big blind are left, and I decided to put in the big whopping raise to $12 total. It was more of a joke than anything else, but both players come along obviously for $6 more. 36 in the middle, and we go to this board run out that comes 3 queen 7 rainbow. Action gets over to me, and I decide to check this back, trying to let our opponents catch up here. Shelby decides to bet $10 on this jack of clubs on the turn. I decide to raise it up to $25 here. The small blind announces a raise. We don't know how much yet, but while he's thinking about it, I'm contemplating what I'm going to do when the action gets back over to me. I'm really hoping that Shelby puts in the call, obviously, but I don't expect him to call a raise and then re-raise after he had bet initially. It looks like our opponent made it $65 to go here. I interpret this as a pretty good hand that needs protection, or potentially some sort of straight or flush draw that's going to make a big bet on the river. I guess it's also possible that our opponent has a set as well, but if he does, he's just going to get all of our money here because I decide to go for a massive overbet and jam here. Our opponent does not snap call, so that makes me feel a lot better about our hand. I don't think our opponent has a set, otherwise he would have just instantly called. While taking his time and thinking it over, he ends up flipping his cards face up and shows that he flopped 2 pair. He doesn't seem to be a fan of the situation, but eventually he does flick in the call. So just like that, we're playing for 748. 1 card left to go, which comes the ace of spades, a wonderful card for us because our set holds, and we take down yet another one. For this next hand, we look down at 8-9 suited. We are in the cutoff, and there is a $10 straddle, so I think this hand is good enough to see a flop with. Honestly, would prefer to raise it and try to thin out the field a little bit, but I expect our boy Shelby to raise a lot of the time when he's straddling on the button, so I decided to just call the 10 with the intentions of calling a raise. But Mike is actually the one that decides to raise this time. Makes it $25 to go. 4 people put in the call, $100 in the middle, and we get a pretty decent flop for our hand. Jack, king, 10 rainbow, so we have an open ender. Mike decides to continue here for $50, and I think it over for a little bit. We do have an open ender, but if we hit the queen, there is a 4-liner that'll put 4 to the straight out there, and we'd be losing to an ace. It's very possible for Mike to have the ace in this situation, the hand like ace king, but he could also have something like king 10 or king jack. So we go ahead and put in the call, hoping to see a 7, but unfortunately that's not the case. We see a queen of spades, and I'll go ahead and run the clip from here.
That's not the one I wanted to hit.
And of course it comes like,
I wanted the 7. I knew the queen was going to be no good for me. Or a heart. A heart would have kept me in there.
yeah, a heart would have been good. And an ace.
Yeah.
I didn't have an ace. Oh, shit. You had the best hand. Definitely the best hand. Sorry, here.
Well, as you clearly saw, Mike bluffed our socks off. I mean, he did have a hand on the flop. We caught up on the turn, and we honestly could have had an ace ourselves in this situation, but unfortunately, that's not the case. We had the bottom end of it. Nice hand, Mr. Mike. For this next hand, we look down at king queen suited in the small blind. There is a $20 open by the hijack. I put in the call, and Shelby puts in the call under the gun. Go 3 ways to this flop with 63 in the middle, which comes 10-7 jack rainbow. We are open-ended. Action checks over to the pre-flop aggressor. He thinks it over for a little bit when the action gets over to him, and he decides to bet $35 into 63. I think this is a good price for us to chase our open ender, so we go ahead and put in the call. Shelby gets out of the way pretty quickly. 133 in the middle, and we are going heads up to this turn card, which comes a 5 of diamonds. I verbally check this over to our opponent. He thinks it over for quite some time. Before putting out a bet of $75, and this is where we start getting malicious intentions. We could just flat here and hope to hit our card on the river, but I think if we put in a check raise instead, we're going to give ourselves a lot more options. This is a pretty strong line, and then if we go for a pot size bet on the river, it's going to be very hard for our opponent to hold on. I decide to raise to $160 here. It would be great if our opponent just folded here and we won without having to actually hit our hand, but this bet sizing isn't designed to get him to fold on this street. It's to build the pot for us to put in a chunky bet on the river. Our opponent tanks for a bit, but eventually does put in the call. 453 in the middle, and the ace of spades peels off. We no longer have to bluff at this. We have made a straight, and it is the nuts straight at that. But since I was planning to make a pot size bet on a bluff, I think that tells us that we have to make the exact same bet when we have the nuts. So I announce a bet of 400, and our opponent goes deep into the tank. My boy Connor over here has played enough to know that I am perfectly capable of doing this with air, but he's really gonna have to decide if he wants to F around and find out. He goes very deep into the tank, so at this point I know he has a pretty good hand. I don't think he's gonna be just doing this with a single pair. I'm expecting him to have a hand like Jack 10 or maybe even Ace Jack in this situation. He goes back and forth for quite some time, but eventually says the following.
You wanna see for the vlog?
Up to you. River.
Our boy Connor somehow finds the fold with pocket jacks. Wow, absolutely insane. Not sure if we would have been able to get him off of that hand if we hadn't hit the ace. 8-9 was definitely in there, but it's very hard to put an opponent on a flop straight. Luckily, we were able to take this one down, and Connor definitely lost the minimum here. Great laydown, sir. The tides have definitely turned in our direction. We went from being completely card dead to hitting pot after pot, and this hand is no exception. We looked out at pocket jacks on the button and bump it up to $15. The small blind decides to re-raise us to 50. He has about 250 behind. Could easily be doing this with ace king or ace queen, so I decide not to mess around and instantly just put him all in. If he has queens or better, so be it, and play for all of it. He doesn't seem thrilled about the situation, but puts the money in fairly quickly. Board runs out king deuce 5 with 2 spades. Turn is a 5 of clubs, river is a 3 of clubs. Our opponent does indeed have ace king. Fortunately for him, he decided to run it once, because I did ask if he wanted to go once or twice before the cards got dealt. So he's gonna take down this $502 pot. For this next hand, the $7 is on by yours truly. We only got one caller, so I throw an additional $10 in there to start building up this pot a little bit. Going heads up to this board, which comes 9-7 deuce with 2 hearts. Our opponent checks it over to us, and with the flush draw, we definitely want to bet here heads up, so I'd bet 15 into 37, going to this turn with 67 in the middle, and the ace of clubs peels off. Our opponent reaches for chips, but ends up announcing check. Definitely want to size up here. I go for a full pot size bet of $65. Our opponent very quickly puts in the call, and we go to this river, which comes a jack of diamonds with 197 in the middle. Our opponent checks it to us once again, and at this point, I'm not sure if he's just willing to call us down with flop top pair if he had something like a pair of 9s. It's also possible that he had some sort of straight draw, but the only straight draw that makes sense that calls the flop is 8-10, which just got there. So I don't know if this check is trying to entice a bet, or if he just has a small pair that wants to get the showdown as cheap as possible. I ended up checking it back because I thought our opponent may have been trapping us. And to my surprise, the villain shows 5-3 of hearts. So he was also on the heart draw, and our queen high is actually good. Bit of a weird one. I probably should have bet the river considering all we had was queen high, but I honestly thought that our opponent had some sort of pair and was going to get sticky with us. For this next hand, the $20 straddle is on. There's a couple of limpers and we look down at Jack 10 suited. From the hijack, cutoff calls, big blind calls, and when the action gets back to our boy Shelby, he decides to check this one back. We get an absolutely phenomenal flop here of 8 ace 7 with 2 clubs. To make things even better, the under the gun player starts building this pot up for us. He decides to bet 35 into 100, which is a phenomenal price for us. So I go ahead and put in the call. All the other players get out of the way, so we're going heads up to this turn with 170 in the middle, and the 2 of diamonds peels off. Our opponent does not slow down whatsoever. He puts in a bet of $65 here, and we're definitely going to raise, but I want to raise enough for him to put in a call here. So very awkward with our chip grabbing method here. We raise to $160. It's about 2.5 times what he bet on this turn here. Our opponent has a little under $400 left, so if he calls this bet, it's going to set us up for a nice pot-sized jam on the river. He thinks it over for quite some time, does eventually end up putting in the call. So we go to this river with 490 in the middle, and the 7 of diamonds peels off. Our opponent checks it over to us once more, and I take a little bit of time to contemplate whether or not our opponent had a set here. And if our opponent did in fact have a set, I don't think he would have tanked for 2 to 3 minutes on the turn like he did. I know we fast forwarded through it, but he did take a very long time to make that call. I feel like a set just puts in the chips right away, tries to pair up on the board, and either folds it on the river or pays us off. So after deciding in my head that the opponent probably had an ace, I decided to go all in, and our opponent goes deep into the tank. Not sure why he called the turn if he was planning to fold on the river. He either believed we had the flush on the turn or not, but after various minutes of thinking it over, our opponent does eventually put in the call. We show him the bad news, and he returns his cards to the dealer face down. For this next hand, we look down at Jack 10 offsuit in the cutoff. The $6 straddle is in fact on, so when the action gets back over to us with no limpers in between, we just put in the call. Action goes back over to Shelby, and he calls as well. Big blind comes along for the ride, but the big blind says 6 is not enough. He raises to 16. We put in the call, Button puts in the call, and Shelby puts in the call as well. When 4 ways to this flop, $64 in the middle, and the board comes out 5-9 queen with 2 spades. We flopped an open-ended straight draw, and the big blind decides to continue his story here that he has a strong hand. He goes 30, and I very quickly put in the call, but the button says calling is not enough. He announces raise, throws the original 30 in there, throws another $90 on top. Big blind thinks it over for quite some time, but eventually puts in the fold. The action gets back over to me. I go ahead and put in the call. Go to this turn heads up, 3-14 in the middle, and the turn comes a 6 of spades. I check it over to the button, and he very quickly goes for a bet sizing of 150. I was putting him on top pair or the flush draw, seeing as to how we have no spades in our hand. I think it's far more likely that he has the flush draw over top pair. It's a good price to chase a straight if the straight were to be the nuts, but it's also possible that we're paying to chase something that's already beat. So after thinking it over for quite some time, gauging who the opponent was, if they're capable of making a move like this, I do decide that I'm just going to fold instead, and that's when the villain ends up showing pocket 5s. So our open ender was still somewhat good, although because our opponent was holding the 5 of spades, that eliminates the amount of outs that we had, because any spade would have given our opponent a flush. But either way, in the long run, I think this was a good fold. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below.
Even Chen, you want to do it? Just 100 flat, we just go to the river?
Yeah.
It's the last hand of the night.
No, after.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, everybody? 100 to 16.
Anyone else can jump in?
Yeah. There you go. There you go. That's what I like to see, baby.
Kevin, you got 4 kids to feed.
Kevin, you got 4 kids. You got 4 kids. $100 running out.
Me and Leo are in. Half-half.
Half him and Leo.
Nobody
No way.
your cards.
Or wait, yeah.
Flip them at the end.
So in case you guys haven't noticed, we decided to run a $100 PLO Bomb Pot at the end of the night. Everybody just threw the full $100 for the capped PLO Bomb Pot in, and we're just gonna run the entire board out, have a jolly old time, make it fun to close out the night. This is just straight degen gambling. No thoughts, no strategy. Just hold on to your seat. just throw in $100 in there and hanging on to your seat. The floor and the dealer went 50-50 on a hand. They both threw $50 in. We got a total of 8 people involved, so it's going to be $800 in the middle, and we'll just let the clip run.
Yeah. Somebody punish him.
Oh, yeah.
This is good. Only at Outlaws, baby. Only at Outlaws.
Come on, Leo. Deal you a winner.
This is the first bomb pot I'm gonna get past the
Hold
flop
on,
tonight.
I forgot. I need a hand shuffle then.
Hold on. We're in.
Come on, this guy. This guy.
I didn't do myself.
Look.
What a partner he is.
Hey, look, I already know.
Win without a fucking hand.
I already know he's got me. There's your tip. There's your tip.
I have to make sure.
Hey, I'll take his money, man, if he wants to.
Turn, okay?
Yeah.
Leo got the flipping.
And then they have to keep flipping until they beat the hand?
Yeah, you gotta keep.
That's usually how we do it.
Yeah.
So hold it. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta hold on. Everybody.
Nobody look.
Aaron first, okay? Flip one card, Aaron. That's all you need to do.
Yeah, Aaron, only flip one.
Just one. Oh, you gotta do
No, he's got to flip until he can beat Aaron.
Yeah, beat
Until you
Aaron.
can beat 10 high.
Only one is pocket eights. That's a good card,
It's a
dude.
pretty good card. Flip another.
You can't beat a 10 high. No, you can't.
Still can't be at 10 high.
Yeah, that's all right. One more.
Keep going. Okay, no, you
Queen high. Queen high.
Oh, he might have the stern in you.
Deuce. Oh,
There's no 8 shot. You just need a pair.
3.
8. Oh, baby, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yes, let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
That's good card.
Pocket 4s, maybe.
Yeah.
4, 8.
3.
That's good card. All the full
That is
deuce.
a good card.
You got deuce. You need a deuce 4, 8.
5. 2 pair.
Oh,
2
shit.
pair.
You got a lot of
You got
outs.
outs now.
You got a lot of
Oh, baby.
5,
Oh, baby. Oh,
You're taking all
baby.
my outs.
You're taking all my outs.
Fuck. $50 down the drain.
Come on, Calvin. You bad luck.
Okay. 3. All right.
You dealt that shit.
8. Oh, shit.
Oh no, ace 3 good. 3
8, 3 kicker. 3 kicker. 3 kicker. Fuck you. Good job. Chop, chop. Yeah, I'll take it.
Oh, ace good.
Eight.
Okay, aces, buddy. That's all you need.
6.
7.
Yeah.
9. Oh, that's another out.
7 ace. 7 ace. 7 or ace.
Deuce.
Getting slow roll it.
I need an 8.
Get an 8. I need an 8.
That's good card.
Good card. Good card.
6.
Not great.
6. Oh, deuce. Deuce or 6.
Taking my outs.
Deuce or 6.
Deuces are gone, baby.
There's 6s.
Ace.
Oh, there's my ace. Up after 8.
5.
Another 5?
5 or
5 would work.
Oh.
7. 5 or 7.
Nope. Uh-oh. He's got outs. Who's got the boot?
6. Nobody have a 6 yet. Nope.
Got a 6 in that.
So stressful.
You need a 3.
Each flip one
3 is
instead
good.
of you do both yours. Each flip one.
Okay.
You got a chance.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Either 3 or any. 3.
Oh!
You got a
Release
wheel.
tight.
Oh, no, you got a wheel already.
Oh,
You
shit.
got a wheel already.
Yeah, the boat.
You need a bolt. You need a bolt up.
one ace
Or deuce for tie.
There's only 1 ace left, I think.
You can let JJ win the whole thing.
Fuck.
Come on. Oh!
Shit.
Nah, oh,
shit.
You need ace or 5. Ace or 5. Oh,
Damn! Wow, are you fucking kidding me? Oh, that's gross. What's that, buddy?
Thank you, Pointy guys.
That was sick.
All right, guys, and that brings us to the end of our video. Thank you so much for stopping by. As all of you know, Thursday is our regular day here at Outlaws, and as you saw, the action can get quite out of hand, but the people are always a good time. If you guys want to try to make the vlog yourselves, feel free to stop by any Thursday. You know your boy is always going to be here and ready to catch you on the camera. Anyhow, going over the session updates real quickly. Sorry for not throwing the on-screen overlays. We bought in for 900 this week, cashed out for 2100, which is our biggest profit in any cash session to date, getting us a lot closer to hitting that 10K bankroll mark that we were at earlier in the year that we unfortunately punted half of out in Vegas. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Oh, and before I forget, we still have an editor in the works. We haven't hired anyone yet because none of the candidates that have applied have been to our liking. but that is still in the works. So as soon as we get that editor, we are going to start pumping out a lot more content. Backdated vlogs and shorts are going to be in the works. And once we catch up to that backlogged work, the merch store is in fact dropping. I'm hoping we have an editor before the end of the month. We get caught up before the end of January and start working on those cool new things for you guys ASAP. Thank you all for stopping by. Hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll catch you next Thursday.